It's Spoilerin time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tom Merritt. That man right over there is Brian Brushwood, and we are about to spoil your face off.
Sorry, faces. I hope you enjoyed your brief tenure attached to the musculature of a jawbone, but it's over as of now.
Yeah.
Hashtag spoil.
Justin Robert Young is joining us because it takes 3 to spoil your face off because your face is so pretty.
Okay, so I guess this first one we're gonna dive in with Silicon Valley.
With the summer movie draft.
Oh, the summer movie draft. The summer Silicon movie draft.
Right. Yeah, that's what it means. Because it's a race. Avengers Age of Ultron is $313 million, meaning Amtrekker is a mere 80 million or so, 83 million away from Andrew Zarian and the guys from Queen's team, which is pretty much Andrew Zarian.
Look, well, I don't think any of us are convinced that Ultron's going to settle at 313, but I also don't think any of us would have predicted going into this that Age of Ultron, after its second weekend, would still be behind Furious 7. Would you have over under on that?
Weekend behind Furious 7. Hell no. Would have said no. That is not going to happen because I only thought Furious 7 was going to make $250 million.
I don't think that it's necessarily a gigantic upset. Again, I think the story of this draft compared to years in the past is what has not done quite as well as opposed to the big surprises. I think for Furious 7 has kind of performed as one would hope. Age of Ultron maybe a shade below, I think, what its potential could be, where I think the guys from Queens might be their kind of downfall is that Paul Blart was not what it could be.
Yeah, no, Paul Blart definitely underperformed for what they paid. Although they paid $37 for Fury 7, which is making around $340. Meanwhile, Amtrekker paid $80 for Avengers, which is sitting pretty at just over $310. I think we're looking at 2 more weeks before Amtrekker even crosses in front of GFQ. It wouldn't be surprising. No, it has to be next week, right?
GFQ gets Entourage on June 5th, the same weekend Amtrekker has Insidious Chapter 3 and Spy. So it will be an interesting ending to that 2-horse race after that weekend, I feel.
I love that, and Andrew Zarian, because he's so not this guy, but for a guy who has the guy from Queen's Network, which sort of just conjures an image in your mind, the idea that his first 3 movies are like a Axe body spray, demographics, like Furious 7, Paul Blart, and Entourage just delights me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm going to have to totally amend my position compared to what it was like during the draft. I think Frog Pants is going to have a fairly amazing May. Mad Max Fury Road, I would triple my estimates of what I thought that was going to make based on the way the buzz is going now.
And Pitch Perfect 2 is getting great buzz. My Eileen went to the premiere last weekend, and she was like, it's great. Everybody thinks it's great. So everybody who doesn't see Mad Max is going to go see Pitch Perfect 2, essentially. And Frog Pants gets both those networks.
And that's always a dangerous proposition to, as I know, and I believe, Justin, you've been in that position. Anytime you own all the new movies in a new weekend, it's a little bit scary.
So do you guys think Avengers is going to come in third?
Next week?
This week.
Jeez.
This week with Mad Max and Pitch Perfect 2.
Mad Max.
Holy cow! You know what? I'll go. I'm not going to go steak bet, but I'll go beer bet on that.
Yeah.
I'll buy you a beer. I would say all things being
Avengers
equal.
Age of Ultron comes in third in the box office behind both Pitch Perfect and Mad Max.
Yeah.
I would put my beer on that.
Yeah. No, I think that's where my
I
beer's
would
at.
take both of your beer bets, and I will be 2 beers in before. In fact, I'm going to make you guys watch me drink them.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. Just invoice
okay,
us.
let's talk about the elephant in the room real quick. Reese Witherspoon.
What about her?
She's tiny to get an elephant in the room. No, you guys, Hot Pursuit, 13 million. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, we sucked. And that's on top of, was it last week she hosted Saturday Night Live, or will it be this week that she's doing it?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, if it ain't Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy or a fantasy epic, turns out we got the only model of Lady driven movie that doesn't make money, Brian.
Yeah. Well,
congratulations.
I'm sure it'll be
quickly.
the only mistake we've made, Justin.
Real quickly, before we're going to talk about The Shield, season 5, episode 9. We're going to talk about the finale of Daredevil. We're going to talk about Game of Thrones this week, season 5, episode 5. But Brian, I have forgotten something about last week's Silicon Valley, not this week's because I haven't seen that yet, that you are excited about seeing me remember.
I am okay. Forgive us because we don't know what we're allowed.
So inside. This is gonna be so inside, and I'm not even going to explain all of it.
No, that's fine. Some of you will figure out what we're talking about, but we are obligated to speak in code here. And on top of everything, let me say that I haven't even seen the episode in question. But since you have, and since Justin knows the backstory, I want to see your face as you figure out exactly what Justin's going to speak in code right now about Silicon Valley.
All right, Tom. So last episode.
By the way, spoiler alert, you probably should go the 3-shot here because I want to see the facial reactions.
Last episode, Pied Piper decided that they needed to hire people. They got to ramp up because they got some money in and they need to make sure that they have a functioning beta. They interview a bunch of people. They settle on a badass chick who
Alice
fits,
Wetterland, a.k.a. Carla.
fits very well into things and wears baggy pants and a scarf around her neck.
Oh, yeah. I know who she reminded me of.
Do you know why
she was based on her? And
Really? That's for real?
That's
they asked whether or not they could credit her, and she said no. And when she went to go visit the set, because she may or may not be, and I'm already talking too much, she found herself back behind the curtain and saw pictures of herself in the wardrobe
to model
as fashion keys for wardrobe.
So there's someone we know that Alice Wetterland's character Carlo is based on, which I definitely was watching going like, wow, that's really much like that person.
allegedly.
All right, here, I'm just going to read the text message.
A little more truth time than we were prepared for.
Also, Carla in this episode really likes to just mess with people's heads.
Well, that can't be like the person we all know.
So I just wrote, has anyone told you look and act a lot like Carla from Silicon Valley? And then I had the Trollolololo gif, and she reacted amusingly. No, I mean, listen, I think it's. I think that character is a great addition to the show, and the show was greatly missing some kind of female influence, especially considering how awesome and unique their women are in this area and in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude,
That's
all
cool.
I know is super high fives to people who we like, and
There we go. And for those of you who are worrying, yeah, it is indeed Patrick Beja.
okay, yes.
Yep.
Glad we got
Absolutely.
that out there. I mean, look, real quick, we got a picture of Patrick Beja right here. I mean, it's like, it's definitely
Yeah.
Patrick Beja, right?
Valar Scarfullus. All men must wear scarves.
I'm going to say this to anybody who picks up what we're putting down. Let's keep it between us, because there is a reason why our friend did not want her name on it. So it is fun that we know. It is fun that we can watch the show and have it be a fun time. But I would appreciate it if it did not get back to me, because I'm sure she'll be upset.
Just on good behavior, which I believe everyone will be.
Let's talk Game of Thrones, because all men must watch Game of Thrones, and women too. And this episode brings us, Brian, to the raggedy edge of the book. Like the last vestiges of people being frustrated with Brian saying, well, in the book, didn't this happen, are going to be gone probably by next episode, because more than half of this episode doesn't take place in the book, either because they've changed things or because they've just moved right past what we know happened.
Dude, yes, 100% yes. Also, there was one brief moment when it was the weirdest thing, because I was watching the show And I presume the face I saw on screen was supposed to be playing Stannis Baratheon, but I could have sworn it was Tom Merritt, as somebody made the mistake of saying we want fewer blank. Or we want less blank.
He corrected them.
Yeah, he said less blank. I forget what it was. And then and it cuts to Stannis going, fewer.
Yeah. Brian, I didn't want this known that they'd based Stannis' character on me. So I appreciate it if we could just keep that under wraps.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, so, all right, Game of Thrones is the best show ever. My favorite part about it is that it exists, and I get to stand in its beautiful glow every Sunday night that it airs. This episode was specifically, really, really well done in what they do best in setting up with these gigantic, wide, continent-raging conflicts to bring it down to a very personal thing. This episode hangs very much on the fact that we have a evolving idea of Stannis, that now we understand him to be a very hard rule following kind of guy, but we now put him in a very sympathetic position because the Boltons, who we spend a lot of time with, are brutal, disgusting people. So what will a rule following, you get what you deserve guy in Stannis Baratheon do to the House Bolton should, he win the battle that is forthcoming and he leaves for at the end of the episode. So it is exceptional and awesome. It's the best.
And to answer Igloo in the chat room, yes, there were boobs in this episode.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, I liked the way we saw, and again, you're right. Let's just tear up the book. The book doesn't exist anymore because the book is nothing more than a first draft. Whatever the book was, it was like we were hanging out with George R.R. Martin while he was high by a campfire, waving his hands around, talking about this story that he had. And now here we are watching the actual story, and we know some of the things he said as he waved his hands around.
Hey, man, I don't know. Season 1, I felt like I was watching the book, and it's one of the reasons I loved the show right from the get-go.
Not anymore.
How faithful it was. And they have done a magical transformation of slowly moving me away to what you're talking about, where the book is sort of like, oh, well, it suggests that might happen, but I don't know. Who cares anymore? This is a really interesting story. In fact, I like Daenerys better right now.
Dude, that's what we've talked about. It's the first time in my life, if I could actively unremember a book, I would at this point, just so I could enjoy the show the way everyone else does. And although that's happening naturally as the show changes.
Because effectively there's a few more things that happen in her story, but the big intrigue that remains by the time that the books run out has effectively been set up right now in terms of the Daenerys storyline. Although I do think that we are going to get the stuff that we think we have already skipped in Tyrion's storyline, because they have spent a lot of time talking about Rhaegar. And I think that we are going to see, and they've been very specific about Targaryen. She's the only Targaryen. I think we are going to, Tyrion will run across the person that he runs across in the books.
But even if he does, it's different.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly so.
Yeah. And so it kind of doesn't matter. If he does, it'll be a cool surprise. If he doesn't, it'll be not as cool, but it will be something we couldn't tell. Like, we don't know. I think you're right. But I think it will happen in an entirely different way that makes it irrelevant that you might know something from the book at that point.
Yeah. And I think we're going to get far closer to that conflict coming to some kind of a head in the show. And I think that's what's exciting, is that
what's going to happen to Sansa?
Dude, I don't know. Like, my prediction was earlier, like, oh, well, she's going to die because, again, spoiler alert, there exists the books. She doesn't seem to do a lot in the books. And in the moment they said people will die on the show that didn't die in the books, I was like, well, she's the most useless appendage in the books. However, because basically all she does is watch, Littlefinger manipulate and do tricky stuff. However, she's made herself a pivotal character in the entire Winterfell. By the way, I'm getting more and more into watching the intro credit sequence when you, like, for example, when it shows Winterfell and pans around, you see the Ghostwood tree and all that, but you also see the sigil of the flayed man spinning around. It's very owned territory, whereas in previous seasons you saw it smoldering and in ruins. I can say with all honesty that I've never been more excited to think I know, but know for a fact that I don't know where stuff's headed from here. All I could do is high five whenever there's themes that are similar to the experience I've already had.
Daenerys is trying to wrap things up in Meereen so that she can move on, and it's proving thorny and she can't get out of it. Stannis is marching south to Winterfell to take on the Boltons. Jon Snow is headed north to get the wildlings on his side and bring them back to help defend against the wall. The Sand Snakes, which we didn't see in this episode, are at best an unreliable ally to King's Landing, where we have a totally ineffective ruler who is under the influence of Cersei and his wife, Marjorie, and is ripe for conquering.
Pretty good place to be in. I'm a little bit super stoked.
It's super rad, and the spoiler. I don't know if it's a spoiler. Stannis marching to Winterfell is where we end with him. Anything new we get with him, and I guess there's a little bit about whether or not he's going to be offered a free checking account at an Iron Bank. I suspect at some point, but. Aside from that, we kind of have to get the Battle of Winterfell, right? Which puts us beyond the books.
Oh yeah, we're beyond the books almost everywhere.
Oh, speaking of which, that's a delightful thing. Is that moment in this episode was the first time we saw Sansa encounter Reek, Theon Greyjoy, right? And we see him placed in the agonizing position. Which again is something that just flat out didn't happen in the book, but I'm drinking it in from the movie or from the television show perspective.
But
very good.
And so much of what is great about this is what was great about the adaptation of Lord of the Rings, where the best work is in figuring out how to condense this kind of stuff, because we love these actors, we love these characters. So let's put Bronn and Jaime out on into the Dorne plot line that they're not in the books. Let's put Sansa, instead of having her kind of on the back burner in the Vale. Let's put her in the middle of the action. Which, by the way, I have the entire diametric opposite idea than you do, Brian. Which I'm like, if they put Sansa in the middle of this, and that means she has to survive, because that's why they're back burnering her, right now in the books, because she has to play a gigantic role later. So I don't know. It's going to be great.
God, this is all I ever want from properties based on other properties, is to, as quickly as possible, spin me in a position of not knowing what comes next. And it genuinely happened. I can't believe it.
Oh, by the way,
right.
If you I need to hear more of Justin's opinion about this episode of Game of Thrones, I will be on Tyrion's Landing in the next half hour or so. So tune in.
Which is part of the reason we got to let you go. The other reason is you haven't finished Daredevil yet, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So thank you, Justin Robert Young.
Valor Morghulis.
Go watch Night Attack, nightattack.tv. Go watch Jury More. Go watch Justin sleep.
Yeah, I do. I periscope my sleep.
Dude, get ready. And by the way, get ready for our forthcoming Twitch stream, Hearth and Oats. Twitch.tv.
Yeah, no, I'm getting a new PC so I can stream Hearthstone.
Dude, let's just make it official, right? Because it's like all right, Hearth and Oats, the world's only Hearthstone live stream plus relationship advice, 24 hours a day.
All right, peace out.
Cheers, man. Daredevil. Finale. The finale episode felt like it was episode 12, which you hadn't finished when we talked last time.
Yeah.
How did you feel at the end of episode 12, and what did you expect to be coming in episode 13?
What was delightful about episode 12, of course, the big twist in episode 12 was that Ben Urich, it felt like you were having this coming together of the team. You had the three different elements of Nelson and Murdoch's team, and then you felt like the missing fourth man was Ben Urich, and it was obvious that he was going to be a player in this. And then there's this face-off where he has soliloquies, dueling soliloquies and slam poetry against Kingpin. But the moment for me, there are two moments that are pivotal. Up until this moment, they have gone out of their way to portray Kingpin as a complicated, terrifying, and yet often sympathetic character. They go out of their way in episode 12. That moment is haunting and chilling when he says, "I'm not here to intimidate you." And with rage simmering in his voice, he says, "I am here to kill you." And then with great joy, he strangles to death Ben Urich in violent fashion. And you're like, oh, wow, he really is bad. And as if, so in that case, it's like emotional bad guy is now checked off. Maybe he has the right idea, but he has the wrong way to go about it.
Well, the way I look at him is he became himself when he killed his father. He not only like took his first brave step, he was always a cowering child, but he actually enjoyed it. He felt like he had done something right. And so Wilson Fisk is motivated by doing what is right. And he formed at an early age the idea that when something is upsetting and wrong in your opinion, you kill it and it feels good. And you see him play that out with the guy in the door all the way up to Ben Urich.
Yes, I would agree with that. However, up until Ben Urich, we had only seen him exact his revenge in graphic way on people who deserved it. His dad deserved it. That Russian dude deserved it. Part of the scum underworld. Everything about Ben Urich was a good man. This is the first time we saw him kill a good man and do it with the same gusto.
But he's not good to Wilson Fisk.
Well, then, no, not convenient to Wilson Fisk, right? You know, but the fact that he visited his mom doesn't qualify quite in the same, like, you're definitely a bad guy.
But why did he kill his dad? Because his dad was threatening his mom. What did Urich do? He threatened his mom.
That's right. Well, but he didn't even do that, but he did close enough. But to me, the transformative moment, because none of those moments felt particularly transformative for Fisk. They felt like him reacting and then diagnosing his opinions, like, why did I do that? Oh, I did it because of this. Whereas he has a come to Satan moment in that car when he starts telling the story of the prodigal son, or no, not the prodigal son, the Good Samaritan, and realizes, much like Jules from Pulp Fiction, he says, "I am the vengeance of furious men." He says, "I am the ill intent," and all of a sudden he realizes, I've been acting. I've been doing all these things because I believed I was good. And all of a sudden it hits him. Look at my natural gifts. Look at what I am. I am not a good man. And in that moment, I loved everything about the pregnant terror of him being in transition and then them stopping and then them shouting, one of the cops being on the take, one of them not, and just putting a bullet in his head, and him standing out looking Kingpin as hell, straightening his tie and marching off to do Kingpin ass stuff. I mean, it was great.
He is Kingpin from that moment on. And it's a great parallel because what we also see is Matt Murdock become Daredevil
for the first time. All the cover art has him in his badass, bulletproof, stab-proof suit, and we never see it. And this is the brilliance of Daredevil. Is the first episode, you think, oh, this is great. They're skipping all that origin story nonsense. But then it's not until the last episode that you realize, like, oh, wait, This was 2 origin stories. I mean, it was so.
It was
well
an
done.
origin story the whole time. Yeah.
But not just for Daredevil, because it very much
for Kingpin too.
You have 2 partially formed entities. You have Kingpin, who's driven by passion and driven by emotion that's out of control at time, who's physically strong and powerful and understands that he has no tolerance for the slow movements of other entities in his life, and he cleans things up to, it's the most efficient thing for him to run everything, so let me just run everything. I'm the Kingpin. Likewise, you've got Matt Murdock, who knows, that he can affect direct change in a more meaningful way, that he can use his enhanced senses, but that he's also very human and very vulnerable, and you have his galvanization. However, real quick, can I just say, a little tip of the hat, one of my favorite moments of the entire thing is in all of Daredevil, they've done an extraordinary job of keeping the boundaries small. This is not the Avengers. The world exists only in Hell's Kitchen. Nothing exists outside of Hell's Kitchen. This is a neighborhood story. The yellow neighborhood, because there's always yellow sulfur lights in the background. And then at the very end, they indicate that maybe not everyone's from this neighborhood. Maybe that moment when Gao says, I'm going to go home for a bit, and they're like all the way back to China, and she's like, it's a bit farther than that, and then vanishes, and all of a sudden you realize a little thread of that bigger universe, that connective tissue to the outrageous Asgardian tales of Thor or whatever was exquisite, because I didn't see that coming, and I thought that was very well played, laid out right in front of us.
It's so elegant because they made a veiled reference to New York being destroyed by the Avengers very early on in the season, but it's so veiled that if you didn't know the Avengers, you would just think they were talking about September 11th or some other tragedy, some other off-screen tragedy, and it's so elegant the way they've done so many things. Wilson Fisk's girlfriend, he did a lot of work to convince her to like him on his terms. And at the time, you feel like this is just him being awkward and wanting to, have her not find out his horrible secrets. And it's now flipped to the point where she's like, no, you told me there were these things about you. That's fine. And so as he becomes Kingpin, it's entirely believable that she will 100% support him in that.
Oh, sure. Well, if not be the catalyst that causes it. Like,
exactly.
Well, this is who you are. Why don't you hurry up and get to that?
You never at some point feel like it's a cheat or that they just kind of skipped a step and were like, oh, well, we'll just assume that she likes him enough that she'll overlook it. Like, you're drawn in to where you're like, yeah, oh, that makes perfect sense that she would be like that.
Yeah. Hey, man, I'm short on time, so I think we should plow forward on the Shield here.
Yeah, there's not as much to talk about with the Shield. Season 5, episode 9, called Smoked. Kavanaugh has frozen the finances. He's thrown Lem in jail. He hasn't quite made good on his promise to send Lem to Lompoc, but he's trying to use the Lemansky being in jail as leverage, but he's starting to lose Mrs. Mackey because her finances are frozen here. And then we also have this recurring detective story that is Wagon Wims, and Wims is back from whatever she was shooting in the last episode. And she's walking around a little hobbly. But really, honestly, most of the Mackey Kavanaugh story is maintenance, right? It's just kind of parallel lines, like what are we going to do with Lem? The really interesting turn of events is between Wagenbach and the rookie detective, who screws up an undercover cop's operation. At the same time, Wagenbach finds pictures of her that were taken by the chief because he was trying to catch who was stealing the vending machine stuff and got out to people. And it's this horrible thing where like they want to fire her because she's messing up, but now she's got leverage because Wagenbach showed the pictures to her, and Billings comes up with the horrible win-win of making her a detective.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll work out real well.
What could possibly go wrong?
Right on, man. Dude, I can't wait to check in next week. I'm going to do my best to get all the way caught up on Silicon Valley. We could talk about the whole season.
Yeah, excellent. I would love that. And I am looking forward. We're steamrolling. It feels like Smoked was a good episode that's going to get us to the penultimate. Next week is called Of Mice and Lem. So that's going to be good.
Yeah.
And then the season 5 finale, which obviously ends up with all of them being thrown in jail by Kevin.
I mean, so you're close enough to the later episodes that I don't think it's a surprise to you that Lem is just increasingly a focus moving forward here. And it's
he's
fascinating.
obviously the linchpin of all of this.
Yeah.
Like he is the pivot table. He is the unknown. He turns the fortunes of all of them.
Do you want to commit to watching Mad Max, or should I just watch Ex Machina and we could talk about that?
Definitely watch Ex Machina. It's totally worth it. I would love to watch Mad Max. I'm going to be at a graduation all weekend, so I'm not sure when I'll have time to watch it.
I'll check out Ex Machina. We could talk about it.
Cool. That's it for Spoilerin time, everybody. We'll spoil you next week.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.